Engineers Briefing, Tiger vs. Sherman. Intro narration for your video. My name is Captain William Hartley. I am an armored vehicle engineer attached. Before you watch these tanks collide on the battlefield, you must understand what they truly were, not as legends, not as myths, but as machines built for war. Because on paper, the German Tiger looked unbeatable. And yet, the American Sherman kept winning. The German Tiger tank, a moving fortress. When we first encountered the Tiger, we did not call it a tank. We called it a fortress on tracks. The Panzerkampfwagen 6, the Tiger I, was designed for one purpose. Absolute battlefield dominance. It weighed over 57 tons. Its frontal armor was 100 mm thick, nearly impenetrable to most Allied guns. It carried the feared 88 mm KWK-36 cannon, a weapon originally designed to destroy aircraft and heavy fortifications. That gun could destroy a Sherman from. Its optics were precision German engineering. Its gun stabilization was flawless. Its armor was welded and angled to deflect incoming rounds. A Tiger could wipe out an entire American tank platoon before they ever reached firing range. On open ground, a single Tiger could hold an entire road. It was slow. It burned enormous amounts of fuel. It required constant maintenance. But when it arrived on the battlefield, every Allied crew knew one thing. Someone was about to die. The American Sherman, the machine that won the war. The M4 Sherman was never meant to fly. It was designed to be fast, reliable, easy to repair, easy to transport, and easy to build. And most importantly, easy to replace. The Sherman weighed just 30 tons, almost half the weight of a Tiger. It could reach speeds of 40 kilometers per hour. It crossed bridges Tigers could not. It drove through mud where Tigers became stuck. Its armor was thinner, between 50 and 75 millimeters. Its main gun was smaller, a 75 mm or 76 mm cannon. On paper, it had no chance against a Tiger in a frontal duel. But the Sherman had something the Tiger never did. Numbers. By 1944, American factories were producing thousands of Shermans every month. We could ship them across oceans. Repair them in the field. Replace them in days. The Tiger was a masterpiece. The Sherman was a system. And systems. Engineering reality. The Tiger was built by master craftsmen. The Sherman was built by assembly lines. The Tiger required specialized mechanics. The Sherman could be repaired by farm boys with wrenches. The Tiger needed rare materials. The Sherman used standardized parts. The Tiger was terrifying. The Sherman was everywhere. The battlefield truth. In a straight duel, the Tiger was king. But war is not a duel. War is movement. Supply. Coordination. Air power. Artillery. Infantry. Logistics. The battlefield lay silent long after the guns stopped. Smoke drifted over the valley in slow, heavy sheets, clinging to the burned-out hulls and shattered earth. Blackened craters marked where American artillery had swept the ridge. The metal of ruined tanks still glowed faintly in places, like iron pulled from a forge. The smell of burning oil, cordite, and scorched paint mixed into a bitter haze that settled in the lungs and refused to leave. American infantry, cautious and exhausted, moved across the ridge first. Their silhouettes flickered through dust and smoke, rifles slung low but ready. Medics followed behind, searching for the living among those who would never rise again. Some German tankers had thrown themselves clear of their burning machines, others still lay inside, their final moments frozen behind armor that had once been their greatest protection. Lieutenant Harris climbed out of his Sherman slowly, boots sinking into the churned mud. His legs shook, not from fear, but from the strain of hours spent inside a cramped turret, rotating, firing, commanding, listening for the shell that might crack through the armor and turn the inside of the tank into a furnace. His crew gathered around him, Gunner Daniels, Loader Finch, Driver Morales, Bow Gunner Avery. They looked like men 3 decades older than when they rolled out that morning. Sweat had carved dark paths down dusty faces. Sleeves were stained with oil and gunpowder. Their eyes flicked over the wrecks on the ridge, each one a story of courage or terror or both. Finch pointed toward a tiger that sat at an angle near a collapsed farmhouse. Its turret was split open like a cracked walnut, ripped apart by an armor-piercing rocket. The gun still pointed accusingly at the sky. "Hell," Finch muttered. "That's a lot of steel gone to waste." Harris didn't answer. He knew the truth, none of this steel had been wasted. Every machine here had cost something. It had cost fuel, materials, manpower, time, and, most expensive of all, lives. 1. The survivors. American medics found 3 German tankers near the tree line. Their uniforms were charred, their hands bandaged with field dressings that had once been parts of shirts. One had burns along his neck and jaw, the other 2 coughed from smoke inhalation. They sat together, stunned, staring at nothing. Sergeant Ward approached them carefully. "Water?" he asked. None replied, but one raised his hand shakily. Ward passed his canteen. The German drank, coughing between gulps. Ward did not see an enemy, he saw 3 men who had crawled out of hell. A few hundred yards away, 2 destroyed Shermans still burned. American soldiers walked past them without speaking. Everyone understood. Today had given the Third Army a victory, but it had also given it more graves. War was teaching the same lesson it always did, no side survived untouched. 2. The hospital tent. Dozens of miles behind the front, a canvas field hospital buzzed with whispers, groans, and quiet orders. The wounded lay in neat rows on cots, their boots removed, their uniforms cut open where surgeons had worked. Hauptmann Ernst Richter lay among them. Bandages wrapped his hands and forearms. His face was streaked with antiseptic and soot. Morphine dulled the pain, but memories intruded without mercy. He remembered the ridge, the artillery, the shrieking rockets, the sudden silence when his Tiger's engine died. He remembered issuing the order to abandon the vehicle. He remembered the moment before placing the demolition charge, his hand resting on the side of the turret, as though saying farewell to a trusted friend. No one spoke to Richter except the doctors. The Americans did not interrogate wounded German officers unless they stabilized. For now, he was simply another patient. But Richter could not ignore the truth forming in his mind. The war his Tiger had been built for no longer existed. He had seen Soviet armor smother the Eastern Front with numbers. He had seen American artillery combine with air power in a way that made even the thickest armor meaningless. He had believed in the Tiger, in German engineering, in precision and skill. But now, against the weight of industry and logistics, belief was not enough. As he listened to the cries and whispers of men around him, Richter asked himself a question he never thought he would ask. What good is strength, when the world moves faster than steel can turn? 3. Combined arms. On the ridge, engineers measured armor thickness and impact angles. Intelligence officers photographed everything: penetration marks, turret optics, gearbox fragments, track cleats. They knew Washington and London would want details. One officer dictated into a recorder. Observation: enemy heavy armor, while effective in direct engagement, suffers from overwhelming vulnerability to coordinated ground-air artillery response. Recommend continued emphasis on combined arms doctrine coupled with mechanized mobility. He paused, looking at a burned Tiger whose crew had not escaped. Note: crews display strong morale and discipline. Machines are formidable. Logistical sustainability remains primary enemy weakness. His aide jotted the summary into a folder labeled Confidential, Armored Warfare Study. Back in the States, analysts would translate these dry lines into a decisive reinterpretation of armored warfare, that no tank fights alone anymore, and the field does not belong to the machine with the strongest armor, but to the army that can coordinate its moving parts like gears in a clock. The Germans, for all their brilliance, had built a masterpiece for a kind of war that had already slipped from their grasp. 4. Logistics wins wars. The following day, the Third Army's supply columns rolled through the ridge. Jeeps, deuce-and-a-halfs, fuel trucks, ambulances, wrecker vehicles, field kitchens, an entire ecosystem of war moving forward as one. To the untrained eye, it looked mundane. But to those who understood war, it was a revelation. Morales, the Sherman's driver, leaned on the hull smoking a cigarette as the supply line passed. "This is why we win," he said, nodding toward the trucks. Daniels frowned. "Trucks." "Not trucks," Morales replied. "Gas. Ammo. Spare parts. Food. Boots. Radios. The whole damn circus." It was not glamorous. It did not roar or fire shells. But without it, no Sherman would have fueled up, no artillery would have fired, no P-47 would have taken off, no wounded would have been evacuated. The United States did not defeat Tigers with Shermans. It defeated them with mechanics, factories, trucks, and fuel depots. In Germany, meanwhile, the opposite story unfolded. Fuel shortages had already paralyzed divisions. Replacement transmissions for Tigers were stuck in factories that Allied bombers had reduced to rubble. Rail lines lay twisted and blackened for miles. Supply trains vanished under rocket fire from Allied fighter bombers. Mechanics worked miracles with scavenged parts while German tank crews rationed ammunition like cigarettes. When the Tiger first entered the war, it was a symbol of German industrial might. By the war's final year, it was a symbol of everything Germany no longer had enough of. 5. The myth and the machine. After capturing the ridge, the Americans did something unusual. They attempted to recover several damaged Tigers for study. Armored recovery vehicles hooked chains to the hulking beasts and strained to pull them out of bomb craters and ditches. Some were too heavy or too damaged to move. But several hulls were successfully extracted. GIs gathered around, staring at the machines with a mix of awe and curiosity. "Looks like a battleship on tracks," Finch whispered. Harris nodded. "It's a monster, all right." One ordnance specialist climbed onto the turret and tapped the armor plate with a metal rod. "About 100 millimeters here," he muttered. "Impressive. Then how'd we knock it out?" Avery asked. The specialist shrugged. "Who cares? We did. That's what counts." Another GA answered instead. "You don't fight these things head-on. You make the sky do it for you." The myth of the Tiger remained, even among those who destroyed it. Every tanker knew the stories, of single Tigers halting entire advances, of duels at impossible distances, of invincibility. And some of those stories were true. The Tiger's armor was thick. Its optics were unmatched. Its gun was legendary. But for every Tiger that killed a dozen Shermans, there were a dozen Shermans that never had to fight a Tiger at all, because the Tiger never reached the battlefield. Its gearbox failed. Its engine overheated. Its tracks jammed. It ran out of fuel. It broke down on railway platforms. It arrived without ammunition. It was destroyed by fighter bombers while being repaired. It was abandoned because no recovery vehicle could tow it. The Tiger was not just a tank. It was a machine built by a nation running out of time. 6. Steel, doctrine, and blood. The Americans learned fast. They learned that you did not duel a Tiger frontally. You used artillery to pin, aircraft to strike, infantry to screen, and armor to maneuver. You attacked the flanks. You cut supply lines. You forced the Tiger to fight in woods, villages, hedgerows, places where its gun could not speak across open fields. And slowly, a doctrine formed. Never match the enemy's strength. Exploit the enemy's weakness. German tank doctrine had been forged in the crucible of early blitzkrieg, fast, decisive thrust supported by mobile infantry and air power. But by 1944, the roles had reversed. German armor defended, not attacked. Their infantry fell back, rather than surged forward. Their skies belonged to someone else. Even the greatest tank ever made could not change a war that no longer fit its design. 7. After the ridge. The Third Army did not stop. It could not stop. War punished those who paused. Shermans were refueled. Ammunition was loaded. Radios crackled with new orders. The column pushed east toward the next town, the next crossroads, the next bridge. Behind them, the ridge continued to burn. Local French civilians arrived cautiously, sweeping through the ruins for anything salvageable. They eyed the wrecks with a mixture of fear and fascination. To them, these machines had been rumors and shadows for years, now they lay before them as twisted corpses of iron. Old men spat at the sight of German markings. Children circled Shermans with wide-eyed wonder. Women brought bread and wine to the American infantry, offering gratitude through trembling hands. War had taken much from them. But for the first time in years, they saw signs that the storm might pass. 8. Richter's realization. 3 days after the battle, Richter regained enough strength to sit upright. A military chaplain sat beside him, speaking quietly in English to a wounded American tanker whose face was heavily bandaged. Richter did not know the words, but he understood their tone. When the chaplain finished, he glanced at Richter politely. "You speak English?" he asked. Richter nodded slightly. "Some." "Are you an officer?" "I was." The chaplain hesitated, then asked a question that only civilians ever asked. "Was it worth it? All that steel?" Richter did not answer immediately. He pictured his Tiger, the gleaming machine he had received months earlier, the pride of his crew, the embodiment of German engineering. He remembered how invincible it had felt in its first battles. How the gun recoiled with precision. How the armor shrugged off impacts. How, for a moment, he had believed the machine could change fate. Then he remembered the ridge. The artillery. The rockets. The flanking Shermans. The malfunctioning radio. The smoke. He finally spoke. "It was worth what we still believed," Richter said slowly. "Until we learned the world had changed around us." The chaplain nodded. "War changes faster than men do." Richter looked at his bandaged hands. "Or tanks." 9. The quiet aftermath. In Berlin, far from the ridge, German High Command received reports of the failed counterarmor action. The language was formal and evasive, but the truth was clear: the heavy tank battalion had been decimated. Staff officers blamed fuel shortages. They blamed Allied air superiority. They blamed the lack of artillery coordination. They blamed the terrain. No one blamed the Tiger. The Tiger had become sacred, an icon of strength in a country terrified of weakness. Losing a Tiger was not merely losing a tank. It was losing a symbol. And symbols mattered, especially when reality had begun to collapse. But factories could not produce symbols out of thin air. Germany lacked chromium for armor plating, tungsten for shells, rubber for tracks, skilled labor for assembly. The Reich had built a machine too complex for a nation under siege to sustain. A Tiger that could destroy a dozen Shermans meant little if it could not reach the battlefield or could not be repaired afterward. War has no patience for masterpieces. 10. Lessons written in iron. Weeks later, American military studies distilled the battle into conclusions that would shape warfare for decades to come. 1. Armor does not fight alone, combined arms decide battles. Tigers lost because American artillery, infantry, armor, and air power worked as one machine. 2. Mobility outweighs firepower in prolonged operations. Shermans moved and supplied faster than Tigers ever could. 3. Logistics decides wars before tanks ever see each other. Fuel was more valuable than armor. Spare parts were more decisive than guns. 4. Industrial capacity is the true weapon of modern war. Germany built fearsome machines. America built endless ones. For historians, generals, and tacticians, the ridge became more than a battlefield, it became a lecture. For the men who had fought there, it became something simpler. A memory carved in steel and fire, carried for the rest of their lives.